A manchild is defined as an immature man, although I won't discriminate, everyone is capable of being, to put it nicely, an obnoxious twat. If I were to diagnose this condition at its worst, the symptoms would include a thin veneer of narcissism to hide their insecurity, an inability to take any sort of personal responsibility, an entitled attitude, and a pervasive resentment to any person they deem more successful than them. The manchild is a phenomenon found throughout the world, although different countries may have slightly different words and connotations for this term. In the UK, there are lovely phrases such as wasteman and poomplex. Across the pond, there are words like juvenile and infantile, and on YouTube, there are phrases like anime analyst. However, I'd like to focus on a particular word found in Japan, a word with an extensive definition and informative history, and a word that is central in understanding the message of Mob Psycho. But first, an else word from my sponsor. Elsword is a free-to-play MMORPG that even has its own bloody anime. It's recently released a new streamlined skill system, character icons, intros, skills, artwork, balancing changes, and its third job series. This new update adds a third job, which is basically like a character class, for every single character in the game, meaning there's a ton of customization to be had. They also just introduced a 13th character called Laby. I describe her as a fist-fighting brawler lolly who's extremely fun to play as. She has her own starting area, lore, and story independent from the main storyline, and as always, her character design is just top-notch. Elsword have been a constant sponsor in this channel and have been really patient and supportive with me this time, so I'd be really grateful if you check out the referral link in the description. Thank you, Elsword, for the sponsor, and without further ado, let's get on with the video. The word I'm talking about is chuunibyou. Chuunibyou is a Japanese slang term defined as middle school second year syndrome. It mockingly refers to attitudes that people in their early teens consider cool, but look embarrassing as one gets older. It's a similar condition to the manchild, except add an extra dose of narcissistic childlike delusion. Chuunibyou constantly daydream about being special in some way, so they can differentiate themselves from the average person. They seek escapism so much that it can isolate them from society. Essentially, they want to be like the protagonist of an isekai harem power fantasy. This is also a trope used in anime for comic relief and is a growing cultural term in Japan. But interestingly, one sheds this syndrome in a new light. Rather than this just being a comedic gag, Mob Psycho takes the chuunibyou to its utmost limits. This is the end result of that mindset. Here we get to bask in all its egocentrism, stagnation, dependency, entitlement, insecurity, resentment, self-consciousness, arrogance, bitterness, delusion, and ugliness. There's nothing more ugly than a child in an adult's body, and one does not hold back in showing us this. Here we get to see people so fixated on being special, they lose sight of something crucial: growing the fuck up. This is why Reigen is the ultimate antithesis to the chuunibyou. He has the ability to slap them in the face with the unrelenting force of cold reality. If you're a person who believes they're special or wants to be special, it's probably because deep down you fear to admit one thing: you're actually quite average, to be honest. The crux of the chuunibyou is the desire to be respected and popular because you don't respect yourself. Feeling insecure during one's adolescence is common in the human condition, although some people cope with these feelings by blaming them on the, quote, fucking normies. Fixating on differentiating yourself to become more popular normally has the opposite effect. It makes you a bit of an isolated twat. If you eventually become overly resentful or arrogant towards other people, then you become unsociable. I mean, just look at the members of Scar. They either want to drag people down, view them as inferior, or just not listen at all. What I'm saying is that being a chuunibyou is basically all a coping mechanism, an act, your imagination. And the older you get, the more difficult it is to cure this. An 8-year-old can imagine something or willfully distort reality for their own entertainment. And that's fine if you're 8, not if you're a fully grown adult. Aren't psychic powers in the first place just a willful distortion of reality? Aren't espers just a metaphor for people caught up in their imagination so they can't grow up? I swear to God, one is a fucking genius. Of course, having psychic powers is a unique talent, but the issue occurs when you're overly dependent on it. People are complex creatures, and if you restrict yourself by identifying your entire existence with one particular thing that you might be good at, then you may end up feeling just a little bit dead inside. For example, take the Body Improvement Club. Everyone loves them, and I'm pretty sure all of these absolute units were born with the perfect genetics for physical exercise, meaning they have talents. But unlike the Espers, they don't believe this talent makes them better than other people. Hence why they're happy to accept Mob, a person that is undoubtedly untalented at physical exercise. Because it isn't about being superior to others, it's entirely about being superior to the person you were yesterday. Anyone can improve at anything with some fucking humility and dedication. Basically, talent isn't a good judge of character, self-improvement is. Okay, what if, hypothetically, your life really is just that bad? Let's say as bad as Yusuke's, where your parents abandoned you as a child, you were bullied at an orphanage, and you were dealt a shit hand at every opportunity given to you. In this case, there are two paths that you might go down. Option 1, become a chuunibyou. No one can understand what you've been through, so just fuck everyone and everything. Let's paint everyone under the same brush and isolate yourself from the world. You can't actually grow as a person if you do this, but I mean, who cares, right? People should really care about your problems. This is basically SCAR, an organization run by emotionally scarred individuals. They don't work well together because they're too arrogant to listen to other people and would like to, as Reigen put it, plot world domination when they haven't even seen the fucking world. This leads nowhere and only perpetuates your insecurity and resentment. Option 2. We live in a society. Rather than fixating on how irreparably bad your life is, you consider that the problem might not be with the world, but you. This takes a little thing that only really the protagonists of the story have. Fucking humility. Granted, some aspects of life may be unfixable. There definitely are issues with society that you shouldn't entirely conform to. Some people certainly have it more difficult than others, and life can be unfairly cruel for no bloody reason. So instead, the better strategy is just to focus on what you can fix. If you have a black hole of insecurity and self-consciousness, then maybe work on your weaknesses rather than blaming other people. If you obsess over being special because you fear being average, then maybe embrace your averageness and diversify and improve your skills. If you're obsessed with how people perceive you, then maybe focus on your own problems instead, because frankly no one really gives two shits. If you live in your own head and develop tunnel vision, then maybe have the humility to listen to others. If you're unhappy, then seriously take the time to consider why that's the case and work towards some solutions that don't involve putting others down. I don't want to undermine the fact that there definitely are hierarchies of difficulty, and it's unrealistic to think that all your problems can be solved if you just try very hard. But maybe in the face of all the shit that we have to deal with, self-improvement is the best strategy to have. Mob Psycho gives us different contexts where characters either choose option 1 or option 2. Ritsu fixated on something completely arbitrary, surpassing his brother's psychic powers for the sake of his own inferiority complex. All this led to was conflict that placed his brother, the person he actually admired the most, in danger. It was only when he was at his lowest that he actually began to use his powers constructively, open up about his true emotions, and improve his relationship with Mob. It's never too late to start fixing the things around you. Shinji resented his family because he couldn't live up to their extremely ridiculously high expectations. His inferiority to his brother made him thirsty for approval, so he abused his powers to gain a sense of superiority. He identifies with rubbish because he has no self-respect and countless problems around him. As soon as he realizes his actions actually have consequences, he takes personal responsibility to clean up the rubbish, to fix the problems he caused for his school, his family, and himself. It's never too late to clean up the metaphorical rubbish around you, as corny as that sounds. Tenga definitely got fucked over, but instead of dwelling on his resentment and isolating himself, he changed his perspective on how he interacted with people. If he was a more genuine person, he wouldn't have seemed so untrustworthy to everyone. So in order to express himself better without the bravado, he worked on his weaknesses and gained genuine human connection. Even Dimple, as jaded and corrupt as he is, gave up on his dream of world domination, partly because he doesn't have the power to, and partly because because he values Mob and Reigen's friendship more. He gives Mob confidence and helps Reigen at the office, and in return has become a lot more of a sympathetic character. Mob could have easily become dependent on his power, but realised that being the strongest is only really interesting for the people who aren't already there yet. In reality, even the strongest people are just human, and his psychic powers didn't really help him with his social life, so he works on his weaknesses. He joins the Body Improvement Club despite having the psychic powers of a god and the body strength of an anemic child. He isn't really resentful over his crush ignoring him, and focuses on his own small milestones rather than comparing himself to other people. Partly because he's just an oblivious cinnamon roll, but that's beside the point. One doesn't sugarcoat this as well. Even after all his training, he still collapses during exercise and freezes up on stage. Still, when we start something new, I think we're all pretty bad at the beginning. Sure, it can be difficult and embarrassing at times, but I think avoiding opportunities around you to live a life of stagnation has far worse consequences. Overcoming challenges to realise your full potential is what makes things meaningful. The Body Improvement Club is the embodiment of this philosophy. They don't care what physical shape you start with, because as I said, talent isn't a good judge of character. Self-improvement is. Every character here had the opportunity to become a chuunibyou, but chose not to. And why is that? I mean, it's easier to sit back there and just shit talk others than to actually work and fix things yourself. Well, I think the underlying theme here is the importance of human connection. Sometimes you really do need a helping hand, and you can't truly grow if you isolate yourself from other people like Scar did. And I mean, isn't that what adolescence is kind of about? Finding your place in the world, moving on from the past, and working towards a better future. A lot of Mob Psycho's philosophy is embedded in the absolute mad lad Reigen. I feel like with the global rise of isolation, depression, and anxiety, Reigen is more important now than he has ever been. He's not just a role model for Mob, but for the viewer. If his wisdom and charisma can snap the most far-gone chuunibyou back into reality, then maybe his advice might help anyone struggling today. You don't need to be as delusional as the members of Scar for his advice to be a hard-hitting meta-commentary on your own life. Maybe I'm just projecting again. Sure, he's a fictional character that's slightly unorthodox and idealistic, but I think it's okay to take up his words of wisdom, although be it with a grain of salt. Kill me. Why is Reigen, a man who rejects the superficiality of being popular, the most popular character of the show? I think it's because you can tell a lot of his wisdom comes from one's own experiences in life. I'm sure he's someone one or any other person would have appreciated as a role model during their adolescence. The thing that I really love about Mob Psycho is that it doesn't trivialize the small things in life that other stories tend to ignore. It's a big story about a small step in life. A step that many people have difficulty in overcoming. In the words of one, in my eyes, just leading an ordinary life seems like a pretty tough job too. Rather than escaping reality and glorifying wish fulfillment, Mob Psycho wakes you up to reality. It's the small daily routines that really add up over time. Things like waking up in the morning, socializing with people, being somewhat productive, having a healthier lifestyle, and overcoming your isolation. Focusing on the day is a necessity for self-improvement, and if that makes you a background character, then maybe that's okay. Maybe an average person can be heroic as well. Maybe, just maybe, you could grow the fuck up. Hey, if you're new and you enjoyed this video, then might I remind you that there's a oh god, I should stop doing this. Firstly, I'd like to thank my friend Clyde. I'm pretty sure our audiences are quite interrelated, so I don't know if shouting him out would actually have a huge impact, but this is more of just a general thank you. Despite me being annoying and inactive most of the time, he's always been a consistently supportive person, and without getting too sappy, as a friend, I'd really recommend checking out his channel because for once I'd like to return the favour and support him. I also want to say, in hindsight, I hope I didn't come across as too preachy or generic in this video. To be honest, this past month hasn't really been great for me, so this was more of a message to myself than anyone else. Just think of it as some kind of weird self-reflection that I'm sharing with tens of thousands of people. Oh god. Thank you everyone watching for putting up with me, and hopefully I'll see you soon.